Bread and beer were the food of everyone in ancient Egypt. They were not just simple things to eat and drink. They were the very heart of Egyptian life for the poor farmer and for the great pharaoh. We can learn so much about this incredible civilization by looking at these two simple things. This story will follow a timeline. We will walk through history step by step to see how the ancient Egyptians created the food that built their world. We will start with the first farms along the Nile River. We will end by seeing how bread and beer were used in every part of their lives. Long ago, around 5,500 BCE, people in Egypt started to change their way of life. This was the beginning of the Neolithic period. Before this time, people were hunters and gatherers. They moved from place to place to find food. But then they discovered something wonderful. They learned they could plant seeds and grow their own food. This happened along the banks of the mighty Nile River. The river was the key. Every year the Nile would flood. When the water went down, it left behind a layer of rich, dark soil the Egyptians called the Black Land. That soil was perfect for growing crops and let them build permanent homes and villages. The ancient Egyptians grew two main types of grain. Emmer wheat. Emmer was a tough grain with a hard outer shell, but it grew well in the Egyptian climate. It was the main ingredient for their bread, barley. After the harvest, the hard work was not over. The emmer wheat and barley grains were still too tough to eat. They had to be turned into flour. This process began around 4000 BCE, during the pre-dynastic period. The Egyptians invented a simple but powerful tool to do this job, the grinding stone. The earliest version was called a saddle quern. A quern is a stone for grinding grain. The saddle quern consisted of two stones. A large, slightly curved lower stone that looked like a saddle smaller, rounded upper stone a person could hold in their hands. This simple machine was the first step in making flour. The job of grinding grain into flour was usually done by women. Once the flour was ground, the next step was to turn it into bread. The earliest form of bread, first made around 3500 BCE, was a simple flatbread. A baker, likely a woman working in her home, would mix the coarse emmer flour with water. She might add a little bit of salt if it was available. She would knead this mixture by hand, forming a simple, round and flat piece of dough. There was no yeast in this early bread. Without it, the dough would not rise. The result was dense, heavy and unleavened, similar to a modern pita or chapati. People baked on hot stones or even in hot ashes, brushing the crust clean. Then came conical clay ovens. Heat the walls, remove the fire, and slap dough onto the hot interior. The invention of beer in ancient Egypt around 3400 BCE was likely a wonderful accident. In the warm Egyptian air, wild yeast, a tiny living organism, would have landed in the bowl. The yeast would begin to eat the sugars in the barley mash. This process is called fermentation. Fermentation creates alcohol and tiny bubbles of carbon dioxide gas. It foamed and bubbled, smelled sweet and tangy, and made people feel relaxed and happy. This was the birth of beer. The Egyptians loved this new drink. They called it henket. It was thick, cloudy, nutritious, almost like a thin, soupy porridge. It was full of healthy proteins and vitamins, making it both a food and a drink. To brew on purpose, they malted barley, soak, sprout, gently heat, to turn starch into sugar. They mashed grain to make a sweet wort and left it to ferment in large ceramic vats. To produce huge amounts of bread and beer, the Egyptians needed specialized tools and dedicated workers. For the farmers in the fields, the most important tool was the sickle. This was a curved wooden handle fitted with sharp pieces of flint. After the harvest, they used threshing floors and simple wooden forks to separate the grain. The grain was then stored in tall, beehive-shaped granaries made of mud brick. These granaries kept the grain dry and safe from pests, ensuring a food supply for the entire year. In the home or in a professional bakery, the most essential tool was the grinding stone, or quern. For baking, the Egyptians used conical clay ovens and later ceramic bread molds. These molds came in standard sizes, which was very important. Since bread was used as payment, consistent loaves made wages fair and standardized. In the breweries, huge ceramic vats did the work. We find them at Hierakonpolis and at Abydos. Near the Giza pyramids, a vast complex fed thousands of workers daily. These specialists powered Egypt's monuments. In ancient Egypt, bread, beer were much more than just daily food. They were deeply woven into the economic, religious, social fabric of the entire civilization. Economically, they were the standard form of payment. A simple laborer might receive a few loaves of bread, a jug of beer for a day's work. A high-ranking official would receive hundreds of loaves and dozens of jugs of beer to support his household. This system is detailed in many official documents. Religion was another area where bread and beer were central. The Egyptians believed their gods needed sustenance. Afterwards, the physical food was taken by the priests, the reversion of offerings. Offerings to the dead were also crucial. Tombs held bread, beer, or magical paintings to feed the deceased. In Tutankhamun's tomb, we found loaves of bread preserved by the dry desert air. At Hierakonpolis, large vats coated with residue tested as barley beer, industrial-scale production. That ancient world left a permanent mark on us. The basic principles they discovered are still with us. They took grain, water, and created the food and drink that fueled a nation, paid its workers, pleased its gods. Every time we enjoy a slice of bread, a glass of beer, we share a tradition from the Black Land along the Nile. Their legacy is our daily bread.